So as I speak, please feel welcome to take any pose that fits in your structure in that moment. So if you need to stand up and take a forward bend, you need to lie down, lay on the belly, rest with the bolster, anything you need while we're in session together, you're welcome to take it. So really just want to welcome you again. And hope that you can use this evening as an opportunity to just forge the potential of being gathered in the body and the mind. And that means that all of our parts will have a place to feel at home. And it feels really beautiful, Kylie and I, to be back here. We started teaching together in Peru and in Cusco, led our first training there, so it feels full circle to be back. And it goes without saying that this valley in particular hosts an opportunity for healing on so many levels. And just recognizing the beauty, almost the startling gestalt of being met in our own skin and surrounded by just the poignancy of what earth can feel like when we're awake to it. The kind of staggering obviousness of how sacred and precious land and space can be. And just calling attention to that today so that we'll have that as a memory long after today to bring with us when we need it. And that's really what training time is about, cultivating the behaviors and the level of attention that we hope to have in the future. If you hope to be awake and alive and vibrant in the future, then you'll need a place to cultivate those attitudes now. And that's why it's the practice field. So, just arriving earlier today and seeing the growth of samadhi. We were here early on, and I was here the day Fernando got truck beds of flowers to plant different colors for the different chakras, and the land was bare, and this had not even been built yet. It was still just the bones of the building. So today, seeing all of the new spaces and the flowers come alive and the mountains so alive. There's deep work here for all of us this week, so welcome. And in recognizing that, I also want to call attention to the grave suffering that's taken place over the past year and a half here and across the world for so many. The ride over here, I had the privilege to sit front seat next to the taxi driver, Gabrielle, and just hear his story of what's happened the last year and a half. Of course, as a taxi driver, depending on tourism, he was completely out of work. And his story obviously isn't unique. And he spoke a lot about people being hungry in this valley and so many deaths and so little help, so little externalized support, mitigated resources, and just a level of suffering that it would be unskillful to neglect as we cultivate awareness here and as we bask in appreciation. It's just poignant to recognize that even in this valley there are people that are suffering. And it's not morbid to turn our attention towards that, because it actually heightens the capacity we have to appreciate this leisure time, the privilege to practice that so many don't have. And that's what I'd like to cultivate with you this week. And what I'm interested in cultivating lifelong is the genuine interest in staying awake and appreciative to what is, because it's an extremely ephemeral existence we have. We don't know how long we're going to be here. We don't know what we're going to meet. And in moments like this, when we're wrapped in Sangha, in spiritual family, and knowing that there's nurturance here, and we'll be fed, and we'll stay relatively warm, and we'll have practices that will benefit the inner landscape. Just knowing those things now, recognizing that we'll still find compartments within us to suffer and to feel like parts of us aren't being met, or to be gripped in the hands of anxiety. And to also be awake and appreciative for those moments too. Like we're here to experience the whole realm of human life. Jack Kornfield calls the beautiful and the bitter the 10,000 joys, the 10,000 sorrows. I hope we can use this week to wake up to that, to what our life is. And to live fully in however long we have. So this week will be a container of a micro life. We take retreat and really embody the attributes and the attitudes that we hope to carry with us when we leave. So that rather than just committing to meditation and to practice, we make our life a living meditation, and we practice lifelong, however long that is. There's an American writer and playwright, some of you I'm sure have heard of him. I'm blanking on his first name. It's Thornton Wilder. He wrote a play at the turn of the century. I think it was 1901. He wrote this play. It won a Pulitzer Prize. It's called Our Town. Has anyone heard of it? Okay. So it takes place in New Hampshire. And the first scene of the play, it opens up into this town. It's this little village. And it's just a normal day in this little village in New Hampshire at the turn of the century. And it opens up to a little girl sitting at the breakfast table, and her parents kind of struggling to get the day started and rushing through breakfast and kind of brushing shoulders with one another and putting a plate of eggs down and rushing off to work. And you know, the milkman comes by on his bicycle and drops off a carton of milk and goes by. And this little girl, Emily, gets up and she goes to school and rushes off to school. Kind of hurries with her eyes down and saunters off. And then the next scene, it cuts to the same girl, Emily, getting married. And on a hillside, and she's much older. And then the scene after that, she is giving birth some years after. And during childbirth, she dies. The child survives, but she dies. And the next scene is her funeral. Really idyllic, graveyard and the villagers all coming to mourn and also to celebrate her life. And as you enter into the cemetery with the villagers, you notice that there are gravestones, and on each of the gravestones are the dead sitting on top. And Emily's there too at her fresh grave, and she's sitting there. And she's begging all of the deceased around her kind of new tribe, please let me have one more day. I didn't know it was coming this soon. I would do anything. Just give me one day alive, just one more day alive. And they're all on their gravestones and shaking their head, and they're saying, that's really not a good idea. Really, we highly advise that you don't. We suggest you do not go back. And Emily says, I think I must. So the next scene, she's transported back to that first day as a young girl that we opened the play with. And she's back, she wakes up back in her chair at the breakfast table and is just hit with this pulse of prana and the smell of baking bread and just the beautiful vitality of the wood table. And she's noticing and she's appreciating, and her heart is breaking open. And she looks over at her parents and notices how young they are and how they're not noticing one another. And her heart breaks open even more. And then she hears the clink of the bicycle and the bell of the bicycle, and it's the milkman coming. And he places the carton down, and she just sees like this incredibly fresh jug of milk and like the nourishment that represents. And she looks up at the milkman's face and just basking in the holy glow of the purity of this man in his youth and in his ignorance, and falls completely in love with kind of the soul of this person, and all around her it's the same. And it was 1 hour she had. She was given 24 hours to come back and live, but only after 1 hour she said, I can't take it anymore. And she went back. She went back to her grave and was just broken open by life and broken down by the humans around her and their unwillingness to live while they had it. So that's what I'm theming this opening circle on this evening, just the pulse of appreciation that we can bring to this moment. We take retreat to make it quite clear that life is sacred. It's easy to remember this precious human life is ephemeral, is grounded in the natural world, that we're a part of it, and that we were put here to enjoy and to celebrate and to fall in love and to make mistakes and to suffer. Because I guarantee you there will be a time after this retreat that you'll forget. It's just the nature of our human psyche. We remember that we're spiritual beings, and then we forget, and we'll need to take retreat again and train, and go back to daily life and forget, and it's just like that. So again, if we hope to, we tend to futurize and place ideal conditions later on and think that when those conditions are met, we'll have the opportunity to be more awake, more alive, more appreciative. And we futurize ourselves. A lot of our parts are living in the future rather than helping us meet existence as it unfolds now. So if we hope to be grounded and aware and content in our future, then we'll use present moment to invite those qualities of existence in. And that's why we're here. So I hope you are all on board with that. It's kind of one of the central thrusts of why we're here together and what we're doing in the practice field. We'll cultivate that attitude together now. Let's take a back bend. I'll have you come into Sphinx pose. You can bring the legs behind you and rest on the belly and bring the forearms down. And we'll have a longer yin practice this evening, but for now just want to offer a back bend to arrive and cultivate the attitude of appreciation. So in order to do that, I'll ask that you close the eyes. And meet yourself right here. Meet yourself right here in this back bend. And then take yourself slowly through the day, from this moment back to the moment that you woke up. And just picking moments that stood out as life bubbling through. As you make your way back, just choosing to really highlight one gem of appreciation. Could be mundane and simple, but a jewel of awareness. Something subtle that spoke to you, that reminded you to live today. One moment to pluck out from this day. And we'll take 3 last rounds of breath before settling down onto one cheek and resting. Back body melts to the front body melts to the ground beneath you, and you can use this very moment to stay attuned to what's precious, what's vital and coursing through you. And just committing to living this week. Let's stay awake for every precious moment. And we'll utilize ancient teachings to evolve where we are now. And will also help heal the suffering in this valley, through this country, through the world, the injustices, the uncertainty, the fear of the unknown that's rippled through. So the potential to be healed can become manifest even just in the simple task of gazing in another person's eyes and being willing to witness their suffering too. Holding our own pain with tenderness too. Staying awake for the suffering and the celebration of life. Let's come back to seated. Take your time. So I was just reminded of a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh today. He once said, and I love this, I had forgotten until today that he said this. I just really want to share with you all. He said that the next Buddha will come not as an individual but as a community. That's how awakened consciousness will evolve next, not through an individual's awakening, but through an evolution of community. And it's just so important to recognize that the work we're doing together is part of a larger force, being on the frontier of our own evolution so we can meet others with a level of compassion and awareness that wasn't available to our predecessors. So we kind of sit atop the lofty ideals and the thousands of years of practice life under our collective belt that, we come from a lineage of ancient insight seekers. And so just calling attention to that and the fact that we're at the forefront of a community awakening now, and it's always a synchronistic miracle to feel who's in this space together, who comes to these retreats and the groups that we form here. We'll hopefully cultivate some lifelong learning now that you have some accountability partners to make sure you're living your life out loud. And in opening, I would love to hear from each of you and just invite all of the voices into the room. We'll be sharing a lot this week and breathing in each other's moods, and so would love to hear your name and where you're coming from, and that gem of awareness, something you picked out from today, a simple gratitude practice, something that you were appreciative of today, or are appreciative of now that you've reflected on your day. So is that clear? Name, where you're most recently coming from, and just one aspect of your appreciation that bubbled through in this preceding pose. We'll start here and work our way around.
My name is Ashlyn,